Another massive story this morning on this show. The BBC chair has resigned. The chairman, I like to call him, actually Richard Sharp, resigned after a report finds that he breached the code on public appointments. He's announced his resignation, but of course, typical of the BBC, they're keeping him on till June in order so that they can have a smooth transition to a new BBC chairman. We've already suggested Richard Tice puts his hat into the ring and he could go in there with a slash and burn mentality and save us all a bit of money, because surely to heavens now, this is an opportunity for the BBC, which has taken ages to get to this point with Richard Sharp because of his involvement in a loan that was made to Boris Johnson, who was then Prime Minister. 2.5 years this guy's been in practically, or 2 and a bit years, and he's finally now gone. And the BBC have said he's a man of some integrity. Well, I'm sorry, he's actually left because he doesn't have any integrity. Surely that's the point. We're going to talk to Rebecca Ryan, political campaigns consultant and campaign director at Defund the BBC. Surely no better reason now than to get rid of the licence fee. As far as Tim Davie is concerned, he says this. He's, of course, the Director General. On behalf of the BBC Executive, I would like to thank Richard for his service to the BBC and the drive and intellect he brought to his time as chairman. Working with him over the last 2 years has been rewarding, and Richard has made a significant contribution to the transformation and success of the BBC. The focus for all of us at the BBC is continuing the hard work to ensure we deliver for audiences both now and in the future. Well, there's also another report that's come out from the Public Accounts Committee in which the BBC is described as not fit for purpose for the modern age. So let's find out from Rebecca what she makes of this morning's shenanigans. Rebecca, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Well, I mean, surely to God, this is now a great opportunity for the BBC to sort themselves out from the top down and to actually look at the way that they're run, to see that they are badly run and to make a change to the way they are run.
Absolutely. I mean, this is just symptomatic of how power operates. And we know that the BBC works hand in hand with the blob. So any recommendation that, number 10 just needs to step away from the decision-making process just isn't going to resolve the issue, because, we're going to continue to see this kind of problem within a massive organisation like the BBC. The BBC was found to be, during the height of the pandemic, was found to be the least impartial British broadcaster, which says a huge amount considering British people are being bullied into paying for it.
Yes.
And then in 2021, we saw 2 million people decide they didn't want to pay for the BBC anymore and got rid of their TV licenses because they realised that if they're not watching live TV, live broadcast TV, they don't have to pay for a TV licence. So, this is an organisation that's in a real problem. Nobody wants to pay for it anymore. We see, 2/3 of British people, poll after poll, show that they don't want the licence fee to go ahead as it is. So, this is an organisation that's in severe problems. And as you say, this stepping down from Richard Sharp is welcome, but it should be taken as an opportunity to go, let's look at this organisation, let's review the whole thing, let's ask the British people what they think, and let's, move forward into a system that works for everybody.
Exactly right. And also, why did it take so long for him to go? Let's just have a look at his speech on his way out.
I feel that this matter may well be a distraction from the corporation's good work were I to remain in post until the end of my term. I have, therefore, this morning, resigned as the BBC chair to the Secretary of State and to the board. It was proposed to me that I stay on as chair until the end of June, while the process to appoint my successor is undertaken, and I will, of course, do that in the interests of the corporation's stability and continuity.
Oh, yeah, thanks very much, Richard. Thanks for staying around. I mean, what a wonderfully selfless act that is. He makes out that he hasn't done anything wrong, effectively. Apparently he says that he's quite pleased with the report, even though the report says that he was in a breach of ethics situation. I don't know why it took him so long to go. And the idea that the Director General, Tim Davie, says he's a man of great integrity, he's basically resigning because he doesn't have any integrity.
Absolutely. I mean, I just first of all want to say, what is that backdrop that he was stood against there? What is it? Every opportunity to make the BBC look cheap, to make the BBC look woke. It's just awful. So that was my first comment. But no, absolutely. And you have to think about what has Tim Davie achieved? What has Richard Sharp achieved in the position? And, whilst they might all pat each other's backs and say, oh, well, he's a man of integrity and, they don't want to tear him down, all of those kinds of things. That's because this isn't a unique situation. These people are, get these positions because they've, rubbed shoulders with the right people, friends in high places. And so, but what are they actually achieving while they're in there? Nobody's actually making any change happen or listen to the people who are forced to pay for the organisation.
Exactly right. I mean, one allegation that has been made is that the Gary Lineker saga kind of hurried this whole process along quite a bit, because Richard Sharp couldn't really, in all conscience, come out and speak on behalf of the BBC against Gary Lineker because his own kind of ethical dilemma was going on.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, what a mess that was. And, people were in an absolute uproar. Defund the BBC was inundated with people saying, how do we cancel our licence fee? What can we watch without having to pay for this? And then to see the BBC, it was sort of refreshing to see them almost take a stance by kicking off the air, but then, come crawling back. It was just, there is no chance that the BBC ever will grasp the nettle on what's really happening out in the country and the views of the people. And yeah, absolutely. So the fact that he's now gone, Richard Sharp's now gone, and that they were paralysed with fear of not being able to say anything about Gary Lineker or deal with anything. I don't think that would have been different with a different chairman, really. It's all the same. It's all business as usual, and covering their own backs and trying to perpetuate the licence fee and keep people being to coughing up.
Yeah, exactly. And you say 2 million people have stopped paying for it now. I mean, that for most normal organisations, that would be a massive blow. But they've got so much money, the BBC, that even sort of, a couple of 300 million quid that they can do without.
Exactly, and yet they still keep bullying people on their doorsteps. When people, our supporters will cancel their licence fee and they say, I'm not watching any live broadcast TV, thank you very much. I'm watching Netflix, I'm watching Amazon Prime, but not live broadcast on Amazon Prime. I don't need your licence fee. And yet they're still bombarded with red letters that are threatening thousands of pounds fines and people turning up on their doorsteps and we don't want to pay for your service. And it's licence fee payers, money, who's paying for that bullying. People that, are paying for that. So, yeah, it's very frustrating for people. This is a broadcaster that is shown to have been in breach of its contract with the British people, and that contract says that it should be impartial, that it should be representative, and that it should deliver high-quality journalism. It doesn't do any of those things.
Yeah. And also, in what world should the BBC in any way be entitled to be paid money by people who aren't even watching them? Because as you say, if you're watching live television, you have to pay a fee to the BBC for the privilege. Well, that's just ridiculous, isn't it?
It's absolutely ridiculous in this day and age, and it's an anachronism from the past where it used to be about if you are hiring television viewing equipment, that therefore you need a license, because I think the sort of the infrastructure for broadcasting was needed to be paid for, and that's how it was first brought in. So all the sort of like the towers and what have you, that once all of that was embedded and people no longer actually use that, they're watching things through digital, there is no way that you should be having to pay the BBC in order to be watching Sky Sport. It just doesn't make any sense anymore.
No, it absolutely doesn't. And I was mentioning this other report which is out coming from the Public Accounts Committee today, in which it says the BBC is basically stuck in a yesteryear of TV and radio without a plan for delivering its services in a digital future. So they're saying that not only is it overburdened with staff, not only is it overburdened with money, but they're not actually very good at spending it, and they're not actually very good at preparing themselves for what's going to come next.
Absolutely not. And if you look at sort of the amount of content that's available on Netflix and on Amazon Prime and on Disney Plus and what have you, and then you compare it to iPlayer has far less content available. And, it's just not, they're not producing content in the same way. You've got, Strictly and all of these kinds of things. But the audience for that, for live broadcast Saturday night TV in that way, is dwindling rapidly. Young people do not watch TV in that way. No. Older people are sick of being preached at with every opportunity the BBC has. And so people have realised, actually we can decide what we want to watch, when we want to watch it, using Netflix or Disney Plus. Or, they can even now with ITV Hub or Channel 4, if they're happy to sit through adverts on those, if they're watching them on demand or on catch-up, they don't need to have a TV licence to watch that either. So there's a lot of the traditional programmes that people would want to see that they can watch for free. So, yeah, the BBC's really taken slow to act on this. And it's, there is a tsunami coming down the line for them. and they seem to be desperately clinging on to the licence fee rather than realising, you know, they need to jump into the future of how people are consuming content. Also,
not only are they clinging onto it, they're putting it up. I mean, they want to increase it every single time they get the opportunity. And I mean, one of the things in this report which highlights the kind of difficulties the BBC have got is that when they, if you remember, the closed down BBC 3 back in 2016, it was a disaster because nobody watched it online, because people who watch the BBC presumably don't watch things online very much. And it's now back as a proper channel, and you kind of go, well, how did that happen? I thought they were supposed to be paring it down.
Absolutely. They seem really confused. They're desperately trying to chase this youth audience, which just doesn't watch TV in that way. And they find, you know, one or two series on BBC 3 that they might be a bit interested in, but they're not going to be, you know, they're not going to be regular watchers. And then how do they justify this huge jump in licence fee? It's just so bad because they're just completely out of touch of how people are watching TV these days and how they're getting their entertainment. And, you know, it just seems that nobody in the BBC, they're very sort of, you know, they have the attitude of, well, we like the royalty, you're not going to get rid of us, you're going to keep hold of the BBC. And they're really not seeing what's coming down the line and realising how much variety people have to choose from. And once people know that you don't have to pay for the TV licence if you're only watching on-demand or catch-up content, as long as it's not on player, you don't have to pay for the BBC. In which case, you know, people are just switching off in their droves. They're just, you know, checking out from it.
Well, they're chasing people away. I mean, look at what they've done to Radio 2. They've tried to start chasing a younger audience by appointing 48-year-old DJs instead of, you know, sort of 68-year-old DJs. It's not really working for them. Half of them have ended up working over here with us at Virgin, you know, but they don't seem to have a plan. They don't now have a chairman. I mean, surely to God, they should get somebody in who is going to completely redesign and take a scythe, quite frankly, to the budgets and say, right, you're going to be preparing now for the next century, effectively.
Absolutely, and if they want to, you know, have a successful future, and we acknowledge that the BBC does have still a sort of a warmth to its brand amongst certain quarters of the British public, and it would be a shame for those people who still want to be able to watch the BBC, you know, whether that's sort of like 40% or whatever. The BBC needs to say, OK, we're going to protect the brand, and what we're going to do is move forward into the future. We're going to really pare down what we're doing in certain areas and get on the public sector broadcasting. We'll do something a lot smaller but a lot higher quality, and then we'll have a high-end subscription service in the way that Netflix and Amazon Prime do. But they're just not prepared to even look at things, and I think that's a real problem for them because people are just moving away in their droves. Yeah, they really are. And they're moving to TalkTV as well, where you can watch the Dean Dorries tonight at 7 p.m. Actually, it's 8 p.m, I tell a lie. 7 p.m, plank of the week, which is even better. This is TalkTV. Thank you very much indeed. Rebecca Ryan, their political campaigns consultant at Defund the BBC. Defund it, defenestrate it, de-BBC it.